right, y'all. It's Renee, aka Socio-Scientific Shouty, reporting from Studio B, where the B is for bathroom. Hanging with Justin right here. Justin, do you want to say hello?
What's up, y'all? I don't have a cool nickname, but I mean, we can just call myself Justin. Cool.
And we're here with our first in-person season 2 guest, Brennan England. And Brennan is a professor for St. Louis University's Cannabis Science and Operations program. He's also the founder of the St. Louis Cannabis Club, which is a cannabis resource network that connects the cannabis industry with culture through events focused on wellness, education, entertainment, and economy. And for this group, he founded the Cola Lounge, which, as a volunteer and a frequent patron of the Cola Lounge, I enjoy. But the Cola Lounge is a private members club where people can safely consume and learn about the plant. He's also the president of the Missouri Minorities for Medical Marijuana, that's a mouthful, otherwise known as M for MM, and it's the world's largest minority advocacy organization for the cannabis industry. His duty is to lead and inform politicians, professionals, and peoples of the state. His duty is to lead and inform politicians, professionals, and people of the state on the importance of minority inclusion and equality in the industry, while assisting and paving the way for real impact and action. So, Brennan, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Yes, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So, guys, I've known and worked closely with Brennan for about, 8 months now?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And as I've been trying to really connect more with weed and learn about it, I just knew that I had to go to the OGs because, you got all these dispensaries opening on the street and stuff, but the reality is our uncles, our aunties, our cousins, the people who we really know and love the most, often they just have that knowledge about the plant that's just been passed down through generations. So I'm happy to have somebody who obviously has a lot of industry experience, as well as scientific experience and that sort of background, but just more so a personal connection to the plant and who knows a lot about curating community. So thank you for joining us.
Yes, yeah, and thanks for that shout out. It's I definitely feel like the plant has called me to it as much as I call on it. You know what I mean?
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of, I guess as far as jumping right into what we were going to talk about. So speaking of your business, the Cola Lounge, and how you know a lot about the history of the plant, a lot about the history of cultivating that community. So one of the things we're going to talk about is the history of social consumption. And I guess, to start, I just wanted to talk some about the Cola Lounge and how that plays into the history, how that ties into the history of social consumption.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, in its original kind of unbroken cultural connection, the plant was found in every single neighborhood. It's predominantly in urban centers. We're talking back into the 20s. Before Reefer Madness, tea pads were on every single corner in urban centers, and predominantly in black and brown neighborhoods. And in the tea pads were a space where people could come and have access to the plant, purchase the plant, consume the plant there. And they would also have other amenities like food or music, cafe space, other things where people could just enjoy the plant and whatever else it was that they wanted to do, whether for entertainment or for work. And so in New York City before 1930, in New York City, there were over 230 tea pads. That's more Starbucks than exist in the state of New York today.
So tea pads was it?
Tea pads was it. More, you found them more prevalently, and I'm just going to say that again. You found more of them in the city of New York than you find Starbucks in the state of New York today. And so
they was chiefing.
dang right. And so, what I'm doing right now isn't necessarily an innovative concept, creating community around the plant and making it part of the urban center. But we're just reclaiming part of what this plant has done for us and for our communities and our neighborhoods and our culture for generations. We're just now in a space that we can bring it above ground again and do it in a way that's safe and enjoyable and celebrative and really innovative, and hopefully takes some of what is the history of how lounges and how social consumption culture have been part of us, and then how we can augment it and adapt that for the future. And part of that is by necessity, because the corporate industry has left us with very few access points as people of color to the industry. So as always, we have to get creative on how we're gonna both participate and make money.
Yeah, I think one of the craziest things about you were pointing about like how there were more like tea labs than Starbucks, like as far as like, density. And I think one of the crazy things about learning about the history of cannabis, like in this country, is like the fact that it's not just that like cannabis has always been tied to like through that history of this country. It's that like it was always like, not well always, but like it was super prevalent. I mean, this is, the second time now I've tied back to the interview with Dr. Nurse. So I guess that's kind of a shout out. Like when she's talking about like how when like the initial like U.S. colonies were like chartered, well, not U.S. colonies, but like the initial like English colonies were like chartered in like Jamestown and stuff. Literally part of the charter was like that, they wanted the colonists to grow hemp for England. And then eventually, half of like plantations were growing hemp as far as like, what the slaves were working on and stuff. And so it's like, this plant hasn't just been like somewhat popping up throughout history. It's like, no, this was like, the cannabis plant has been a vital part of like the history of this country.
Certainly. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And there are different ways that journey was interpreted. Depending on what part of the journey you were in. Obviously, if it was one of the largest cash crops through slavery, then that means that we were the ones growing it, right? Mm-hmm. And in the South, hemp was called the nigger crop. Mm. And Kentucky was the largest hemp producer in the country. Kentucky. And so the space that we have to reclaim with the plant is... it's nuanced, because there are parts of it that have to do with how powerful and beautiful that the plant is on its own. And then part of it has to do with how powerful and beautiful we are as Black and brown people, and how our connection with this plant is as resilient as it is. You know what I'm saying? And we've been tied to persecution and to, we've been subjected to the same type of suppression and objectification that is happening to the plant kingdom. Because whenever people in control are intimidated by anything, whether it be a plant or a group of people, then they find ways to shift the rhetoric and change the narrative to make them it or us evil, And so, we definitely... I think that we're in a space where, Kentucky was the number one hemp producer. Missouri was the number two. And so it's in the heart and soul and the DNA of even some of the most conservative good old boys here. They know that generations back that they made their money on hemp. And obviously the male plant wasn't the only one around. And but the journey with the female plant has just been more controversial, and so it wasn't as documented as clearly how people were enjoying and celebrating the plant, because a huge piece of our history, they were just altering and changing the media and the narrative about it into the whole reefer madness thing of the 30s. But there was a whole time whenever everyone was just enjoying the plant, and it was just part of our culture,
And I feel like we've hit on this in a couple different episodes where we see that this discussion of hemp in history seems to be rather, I guess, clean, or just seems like, okay, hemp was a part of white culture, it was normal, it was okay, but then we get to our flower that's full of, you know, our favorite THC, and like people just totally think differently about it. So why does the stigma get introduced with this type of plant versus like the male plant? Is this like coming from history? Is this on some racial line stuff? Is it on like more so the effects that it has on people and like what our culture thinks about when it comes to like having like an altered state of mind through drugs? What is it?
Well, I think, and maybe
Loaded question.
Yeah, right. And maybe you mean this differently, but I think that it's only been recent that even the male plant has been destigmatized.
Oh.
There was a time recently whenever it wasn't even legal for companies to use cannabis leaves in their marketing, even if they were just using hemp.
Wow.
I was making hemp wick actually back in like 2011 or something, and I was sourcing organic hemp. I had to order hemp from Romania that was sourced through Canada in order to find clean hemp specifically. But the stigma ran deep, so much so that the hemp industry took the biggest hit. Even bigger than the female, kind of marijuana consumption industry. The hemp industry took the biggest hit because it's such a core piece of so many potential textiles. And so, I think that we are also just kind of reclaiming that. And it did happen first. I think we're probably 2 decades in, I would say. But I remember even when it was kind of like controversial when hemp's lotion came out at like Bed Bath and Beyond or whatever, and they're like, oh wait, it has hemp in it, but is it like what? And they're like, oh no, it's just the hemp seed. No, but it just get you high. And
It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be kill
yeah. So there was still so much of that even into the 2000s really. So we've come really far, really fast as far as the destigmatization, and I think that also one of the things that has kind of exacerbated that or has accelerated that has been there's been so much more emphasis on how the female plant is getting more attention that it's dramatically altered or kind of separated the two, right? So it's like where before the male plant and female plant were handled and kind of harvested and manipulated the same way and seeds were part of it, now the female plant has been trained and cultivated in a way that it does operate in many ways as a separate product, more so than what it used to. So I think that might be a way of kind of, answering what you were saying in a couple different ways.
Okay. All right. And then I guess speaking of, all the like craze around the female plan and the change in policy, let's talk Missouri. So you've been, pretty active, and it's been great to even be a part of it myself. But with like the recent policy that just got passed, I mean, we're rec now. We've been rec for how long? A few days, a week?
Well, I mean, officially, we had rec rights as consumers in December.
Okay.
And then the actual sales went into effect, just like 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago. Yeah.
Wow. So, like, how that all went down. You want to get into it?
Yeah, so how about that?
Yeah, just to clarify, like, what were the specific policies?
Sure. Well, I mean, the policy was called, the amendment was called Amendment 3. It was run by a group called Legal Missouri, and it was a pack of organizations and companies and politicians and lobbyists that...
Oh, so these were high status people, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Now, I mean, there are still grassroots people that are part of the organization, and it is itself kind of a re-amalgamation of an organization that's mutated 3 or 4 times and taken on different names and different entities. As it's kind of changed and pivoted its approach and also its power structure. And so I've actually been around for most of those waves. I started doing activism work back in 2014 and 2015. And so I was working directly with a campaign called Show Me Cannabis through 2015 and 2016. And that was one of the, it's easy to say that it was one of the predecessors to what is now Legal Missouri, because most of the crew that was part of that is now Legal Mo. Now, no, it's not the same organization. Yes, someone else owns rights to the name and blah, blah, blah of the old organization. But this, these are most of the people from that camp now run Legal Mo. And so I still have some pre-existing relationships with people that I was in the trenches with now almost a decade ago that now have chosen a really specific lane in order to get recreational passed. And they were also the initiative team that got medical passed in 2018. So 2 layers deep of an initiative team that has worked really hard. I'm not going to knock them by any means. They've gone through the night, over the night, and, exhausted themselves to get this through. And so, for that I acknowledge and commend them for. Now, I've also had some harsh criticisms of the campaign. And the campaign and the language, which are 2 different things.
Oh.
It's like, because how you're campaigning something and then what you actually put into law or into proposed law. 2 different things to evaluate, to criticize, and then they both obviously, if done appropriately, should intersect. But that's actually part of my problem with the campaign, is some of the points that do not intersect with the language. And the specifically with the most recent language, how they allowed, I feel like, that they allowed inflamed misinterpretations to cycle through the community without putting them to rest. The main one being the misunderstanding of how expungement works. And that the people, they were saying that, hundreds of thousands of people were going to be affected by the expungement initiative. Their records were going to be clear. But what was not clear is that these are mostly people that are out of prison already. So the initiative is awesome in that it does do great things for people in clearing their records. But on paper, it only clears on average 14 to 30 people maybe that would qualify a year to actually get out of jail. While there were people on the outside that were interpreting this as hundreds and thousands of people are going to get out of jail. Did they say it? No. Did they not say it and clarify for the public whenever it was going kind of like, and it was obviously
and people were saying it in the public. They never cleared that up. No.
And so, and it could be, they could claim ignorance. They could say they didn't see it. They could say they didn't know. But I would challenge that. And I have. And I've had a couple different forums since then that I've both set up opportunities for the community to get information from them and other groups that were proposing ideas. One forum was a debate. One forum was just kind of a question and answer town hall. And then I've also just participated in other town halls that have just been hosted by, state senators or just from local professionals that are looking for informed, balanced input because they know that as much as I have respect for the people that are running this campaign, I also have been highly critical, and I have no problem doing that in public forum, And so, that's just one piece of it. I could go on tangents about this, but the other piece, other than the expungement, is the lack of minority involvement in the industry. The same folks that gave us a bill or gave us a legal program for medical where we have less than a handful of Black and brown owners in the entire state. Now just boosted that language to only give rights to the existing license holders first. And then the provisions that are at least mentioned when someone asks about social equity. The provisions that are put in there are for a micro license program, which actually isn't structured in a way that protects or specifies rights for Black and brown people or those that are specifically affected by the war on drugs. One example is that the micro license program says that you have to have made 200% over the poverty line, right? So 200% over the poverty line is about 30-something K. That also happens to be the median income of the motherfucking state, which means that on that one qualifier, most people, regardless of race or journey, are going to qualify to apply for the micro license program, which is only set to release 6 licenses per congressional district every 100-something days. We only have 9 congressional districts in the state. I know that was a lot of numbers that I just dropped, but people can hit the back 15 or back 10 button on the podcast and just listen to that part again.
Right? Because, we're trying to do, work around this and write some stuff up because there's not too much happening in terms of the people who put all the money to make sure this policy went through. We're not necessarily seeing what are the ramifications actually in the Black and brown community. Like, are niggas gonna be in jail? Are niggas not gonna be in jail? Is the bottom line question.
Right.
Are niggas gonna be able to make money? Or are niggas not gonna make money off of this? Is the bottom line question. Are we still gonna be at harm from this? Or are we not gonna be at harm? And it's like, what I get from what you're saying is that there's just so many of those problems that the answer is no. It's not going to change. It's going to be the way it was before. So, whew.
Yeah, and there are when it comes to opportunities for corporate involvement, those haven't really changed. When it comes to opportunities for people who have been massively incarcerated to get out of jail, that hasn't really changed. Has it changed that? There are less laws for us to get in trouble for? Yes. But does a cop that pulls us over because we're black know that we're smoking weed before they pull us over? No. They pull us over because we're black. So how does that change? That's that's way even more systemic than even what a cannabis law can fix. Because we're getting fucked with regardless. So, but does it also mean that officers that otherwise might be, say, in a double ride, and maybe it's good cop, bad cop, and one of the cops is like, dude, I'm so tired of fucking with people that have weed, and the other cop's the type of cop that's like, yeah, this just gives me an opportunity to fuck with them. Well, now at least there's an accountability check that one can rightfully be like, you are free to go. And not at least be incentivized and be like, oh, fuck, I know that my partner has reason to fuck with them right now. You know what I'm saying? So now when that cop's by himself, is he, the cop that would fuck with us anyway, is he probably going to fuck with us if he smells weed? Probably. That's my thought. Most of us think that way. They're just going to find some other reason to mess with us. And they're going to be like, oh, well, I guarantee you there's an entire group of policing entities that, I know it, that they're finding out ways to police us in our high on the road. They're trying to figure out how they can still ticket us and how they can still arrest us. So it's not like all the cops are like, thank God I don't have to worry about that anymore. Some of them are, thank goodness. But a lot of them are just looking for other ways to ticket us or arrest us or let out their stress.
Look, one thing we gonna get into this podcast is if you want to change what's happening with weed, you're going to have to change policing.
No doubt.
You're going to have to change the racial order in America. You're going to have to change some things that are fundamentally just how America has always been. And I think people get a little scared when they hear the idea of these like major changes. But when we look at what's happening and see people still like losing their lives over weed, losing their lives over weed, whether it be they actually, got physically harmed and they lost their life, or they were put in jail for the rest of their life and it impacted their entire family. Like, we have to do something different. Like, we really have to sit down and say, you know what? Let's think creatively as we're like in this process of changing how this whole country thinks about and operates, like, about when it comes to weed. We just gotta do something different. Like, I don't know what to say.
Oh, yeah.
And rant.
Yep, yeah. And weed laws only help partially.
Yeah. Well, we're making good progress here, but I think now's a good time to talk about what we're smoking on today. So, I had to pack another cone with my roses I got from this trip. into Morocco, and they are the most fragrant roses I've ever smelled in my life.
Yeah,
And
they're delicious.
Thank you. I love them. And then, Brennan, you brought us a little something today, too. So, do you want to tell us what we're smoking on?
Yeah, it was some Maui skunk. It's a heady, would be considered, at this point, it's like a great grandpa strain. You know, it's like those genetics have been rebred in a lot of different ways, but the Maui Wowie and the skunk phenos are very old lines, and so it has a really traditional, piney, gassy, no citrus. It's like pine, heavy pine. A little bit of myrcene, so it does have a little bit of fruitiness, like a little musk, like you'd smell on a mango. You know, yeah, yes, stimulating, cerebral, euphoric, good for conversation.
You could give like a personality profile to each strain. You would do it just like that.
Yeah,
Euphoric.
throw it at me. I'm like, throw one at me. Let's go.
For real. So, actually, I feel like this brings us the perfect timing to get into our quick questions, because we're just running out of time, but we've learned so much today. So, first off, do you have a favorite strain?
I don't.
Okay.
I have more of like a favorite terp. I really like caryophyllene.
Okay.
Caryophyllene, depending on how you say it.
Okay.
Peppery. I like things that are kind of peppery. I also like myrcene. So I like things that are kind of musky and sweet, but I don't like citrusy. Yeah. Like I can do like lemon citrus, but like orangey citrus ain't for me.
Interesting.
Anything that smells or tastes like a clementine.
I was going to say, is that with food too?
I might hit it to be kind, but like I'm not about it. Yeah, I don't really do I don't really like a lot of orange stuff. So.
Well, my entire apartment's like orange.
I mean, I like the color.
Just not the taste. Okay. All right. And then what do you watch or listen to when you're elevated?
What do I watch? I watch and listen. There's a page called Dust to Digital on Instagram, and they do these like really obscure or just inspiring musician clips from all over the world, and they do these compilations. And so I love to just go through and just get stuck on these little wormholes where I'll jump from one compilation and then jump onto their page and follow them for a while. That's one of my favorites. And then I also like listening to radio.garden, which is also like an interactive music experience. If you go to radio.garden, it gives you basically like a Google map, like globe, like it gives you a Google globe, you know, kind of, and it's 3-dimensional, and you can scroll around the globe and click on radio stations anywhere in the world. Yeah, so it's really fun to get really elevated and just like click around and find different places. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, but then if I also just will, if I was going to listen, just sit down, some Stevie Wonder or some Jamiroquai. Yeah, there are a lot of other things, but I've been on a global groove kick lately.
Yeah, you put me onto that new Loose in the Yakuza album. So good.
Yeah.
It's been on repeat. Like, so good.
Hell yeah.
All right. So when you get the munchies, what snack are you reaching for?
Chips, always. It's like, I'm not super biased on what flavor.
Okay.
I mean, Red Hot Riplets are going to be my number one go-to. So St. Louis. And sometimes I'll even I'll even get the new barbecue ridged ones, and I'll like either go back and forth or I'll put them both in my mouth at the same time. They do this. It's so good. It's so good.
Interesting. All right. And then how and when do you partake? Like, Are you smoking? Is it edibles? Is it dabs? Is it vaping? Is it part of a ritual? Is it just more casual? Is it social? What is it?
Sure. I'm primarily a smoker, and I socially smoke, but then I also spiritually smoke. Whenever I'm in my best mind, I'm always spiritually smoking. When I'm in my best space, meaning that I'm always the times that I'm partaking with intention, and with gratitude, not only just of everything I know, but also of every mystery.
Every mystery.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then when we were in the cola, you briefly mentioned stoned ape theory. And I was like, what is that? And you told me you wouldn't tell me until we sat down at Studio B. So now that we're here, can you tell me and the rest of our curious listeners
Yeah,
what
I've heard the
stoned
term.
ape...
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, basically, to put it in summation, it is the theory of psychedelically guided evolution of human consciousness.
Oh, shit.
And that as we moved, one of the things that made us basically outbeat the Neanderthal was like our following of herding animals that were also exposing us to psychedelics, whether it be through eating the Amanita muscaria that are left behind, or that are left in the paths where reindeer were that's a whole nother tangent, but the Amanita muscaria, the medicine people of the what's it called, northern Russia, Siberia, yeah. They got mushrooms that grow underneath Christmas trees, evergreen trees, and the reindeer like to eat them and prance around. And
Goals.
Right. And then it is also said, I've read this many different places, but that these shaman would drink the reindeer urine because it was a concentration of the poisons from the mushroom. But so the theory is, stoned ape theory basically says that over the course of our history as Homo sapiens, that we have our frontal lobe has expanded and our eyes have gotten smaller because of our use of psychedelics. Now, psychedelics are found in other parts of the animal kingdom. Other animals trip. That's been proven.
What other animals are tripping?
Jaguar, dolphins.
You could tell dolphins was definitely tripping outside.
So,
They're
elephants.
happy.
Like stuff growing like in the ocean?
Yeah. I think it's a pufferfish. So they know they can like hit the pufferfish and it lets out a certain amount of toxin and then they get high from it.
Not them smoking on that puffer.
Yeah. So dolphins, jaguar, there are certain flowers in the jungle that they know they can eat. And if you think about cats, they love to get high off of all types of plants. My cat eats my spider plant all the time and he's always tripping. Like he always looks like he's on ecstasy. And, and then the elephants actually are known to eat fermented fruit around grievance rituals. So that's it's even built into how they use, we've witnessed it in ceremony, right? And humans, our biggest thing, the other thing that brought us away from the other Neanderthals is our connection with dogs and watching how dogs moved in packs, and our relationship with the animal kingdom is my point. And how we watch the animal kingdom is a huge part of how we've moved from being apes to stoned apes.
Bruh. Stoned ape theory.
Yeah, and it's a fun way to look at it, and there are a lot of other ways, and it's not to say that it is a linear, one-sided, or one path or one route concept, but there are pieces of it that you can find and that match up with the histories of most indigenous peoples on the planet and our use of ceremonial substances to help guide us to other spaces and to help move us into new realms as we evolve and we advance with our technologies and with our practices of like ritual and thoughts of how creation stories happen. All of these things are complexified by our connection with the psychedelic realm.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like all other theories where it's like you have this general this general like sphere of ideas that you can kind of pull from that kind of just guide like the way we approach like the new archaeological like discoveries that come out.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it is the way it's finding, like with most theories, it's finding relativity. It's like how you can relate it to other pieces that we've already put on the board.
Lens is the word I'm looking for.
That makes sense.
Another lens to look to look at history with.
Exactly.
And like I heard the term, but
we went there. We went from like political to historical to social to spiritual. I love it. So, Brennan, before we head out, we just want to thank you so much again for coming. Could you plug us to your website, socials, events, and just
sure
all these opportunities to connect with you? Because I know there's plenty.
Sure. So you can follow Instagram as our most active, and it's at the Cola Lounge, and also at STL_Cannabis Club. You can also find us at thecolasdl.com. And, the Cola, where buds meet, is the first private cannabis consumption lounge in Missouri that I opened back in 2019. And we just recently opened in our new location. We moved mid-COVID, and now we're in a new location across the street. And
it's beautiful.
We're open every day right now from 2 to 11, more hours coming soon. And we have all types of cool programming, from puff pass and paint classes and guided meditations and yoga and private dinners and comedy events and grower meetups, you name it. Also, we're just a spot where people can co-work during the day and hang out and meet a bud, play some video games, maybe color in a coloring book, or play some Uno.
Thanks. Or foosball.
Or foosball, right?
All right.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
And I guess we'll close this out.
Yeah.
Right
Cue
on.
outro.
Stay happy, stay high, y'all.